Welcome to the new episode of Home Visit with Tyler Siskey and the Associates. Today, joined by my man Ross Dellenger, college football writer for Sports Illustrated and NIL expert now. What do you think about that? Can you get that title?
Sure. It's kind of enveloped my life, certainly the last few months, but really going back to almost 3 years now. So yeah, I guess so. I guess that's my brand now, NIL, man.
I mean, my wife knows this. She actually laughed at me. This actually happened over the weekend. I was reading one of your articles. She goes, "What are you reading?" Because I hate reading. I don't like reading articles or anything else, but I read you. So that's a compliment to
I
you.
feel
You don't even
honored.
realize it. Is that if I read it, that means I don't read anything. So I really enjoy
Yeah.
really the in depth. You actually, I guess what I appreciate about you is that you're almost like an old school journalist a little bit, where you're well sourced. You tell it like it is, with no agendas. Which a lot of the guys have, and it's much appreciated on the inside of the athletic department. Just so you know.
I appreciate it. I do. I try to be as fair and as balanced as I can. I think we have too much partiality in the world already, right? So I'm not trying to pick a side.
There
I'm
you
trying
go.
to stay down the middle.
Stay in
So
the middle.
that's
All
right.
right. Speaking of picking sides, okay, so we're gonna just jump right into it. I have to warn the audience that I have already had a monster today, so I'm gonna be juiced up already. I'm in the middle of number two right here.
Yeah.
Okay, in the middle of number two, but Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher, the gift that keeps on giving. It just kind of hit, kind of really took over. Was that Thursday? I don't even know now. Thursday,
Hmm.
kind of
Yep.
takes over the world. And I have received 8,476 text messages, lots of tweets. What am I going to say? What am I going to do? So I'm going to let you start off here. Let's talk a little bit about Jimbo and Nick and get your opinion on the entire saga.
Yeah. I kept reading Nick Saban's comments about NIL starting, late in the fall, and every time he would talk, it would get more and more aggressive, and it was almost like a volcano, and it would just like the first time was a little bubble of lava, then it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then he met with like the AP, I believe, met with him back in March, and it was like, oh man, the ground's starting to shake, and then boom, eruption at an event in Birmingham where he was basically trying to raise money. It's among business people, and that's how,
Yes.
and it's what, right. That's what people probably missed during the whole thing. And I think, and I'm just going to assume this, I think that's probably what he was calling to tell Jimbo and Dion when they didn't answer his call was, hey, look, I'm just using you guys to try to raise money to try to get into people's mind. This is real, and we got to do it, or we're going to fall behind. And it actually, some of the things I talked to several coaches about, one there where you live in Oxford, like he's Lane is trying to get people to get boosters on board. Like, this is real and going to happen. And so I think that, you saw this eruption partly because of the frustration in Saban, and maybe the frustration not in the landscape of what's happening, but the frustration with his own group of boosters and donors and business people trying to get them on board. And that's what it was for me. I think that's what it really boiled down to. Then Jimbo is Jimbo, right? He's that's him. He's going to call a press conference, get everybody together, and talk 10 miles per hour, and that's that, and that's what he did.
Yeah. All right. So here was I'm 100% on board with you what you're saying, and I haven't heard anybody really say anything about this in public because it was everybody wanted to, anybody that ever has a chance to jump on Nick, they're going to jump on and pile on while they can, right? So it's like, they've been hammering his ass for like the last week because they feel like they can. But Nick was at an event trying to raise, like, Nick doesn't like NIL. Matter of fact, if you poll the coaches, which I'm sure you have, and correct me if I'm wrong here, please, there's not but about a handful of them that really like what's going on with NIL. And the people who like what's going on with NIL have a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
But the ones that don't have the money, they don't like it.
Hmm.
All right.
Yep.
So but Nick is going to adapt. People are very like think that Alabama's going away or this or that. You're sadly mistaken here. Nick will adapt, and so he's at an event that he's trying to raise money. Because trust me, Nick doesn't want to be speaking to people at Wednesday night in Birmingham in the middle of May. That's not his
Right.
that's not his cup of tea. He much had rather been on the golf course Wednesday afternoon. I promise you. Okay, so anyway, he's using A&M and what Jackson State was doing as an example to try to motivate the people in the room that, hey, look, this is what these guys are doing, and you see what they're doing. So hey, we got to come in and do this. And I will tell you this, from the inside, my telltale sign was Nick knew that they finished second in recruiting to Texas A&M, according to
Yeah.
everybody.
Hmm.
And I know you probably know this, but I don't know if the fans realize this. Nick Saban could care less about damn recruiting rankings. Could care less. I mean, legitly could care less about rankings. Hell, he doesn't even, like, the whole time I was with him, he didn't even know what they were. He didn't know
Hmm.
who was ranked a 5-star or whatever, all that stuff. He really had no idea. And that's the
Hmm.
honest to goodness truth. So for him to say that, he was trying to use that to motivate those people inside the room.
Right. Right.
So
And I think that's what it really boils down to. And I assume that's probably what he was calling to tell them that is. And and I say that because I think it was Dion who came out in a podcast or something in an interview he did after the fact, and basically said we know what he was doing. He was trying to rile up his boosters and trying to get donations, and a lot of people are doing exactly what a lot of coaches are doing exactly what Nick is trying to do. And you nailed it, right? The people who are most upset about this are the schools that either don't have the donor base to do it, to really get in the game seriously, or have the donor base but they won't do it, right?
right.
And they're trying to get them to do it. And so yeah, if you don't do it, um, you're going to fall behind. And I think Nick was trying to, yeah, get that through to his boosters, like a lot of coaches are trying to do. They're trying to get through to the boosters. This is a real thing, and if we don't do it, we're going to fall behind. And Alabama, they probably have the resources enough to get in the game, of course. I don't know, and they will tell you, people around Alabama would tell you they don't have the resources that Texas A&M or Texas
Well,
have, but
nobody
few
does.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, few do. I mean, just look at. I was on the phone with an AD in the SEC and trying to explain to the AD the resources that Texas and A&M have, and I did the kind of crunch some numbers in a big NIL. It was in our big NIL story we ran about 3 weeks ago. But if you combine Texas and A&M, combine their donations to the athletic department from 2019, so a year before the pandemic is the year that I took. It's an absurd number. It's like $110 million. It's like 60 from A&M, or 60 from Texas, and then like 50 from A&M. And so if you combine those two in a 16-team SEC, their combination of donations makes up like 1/5 of all the donations in the SEC in that 2019 year. So it is they have a lot of money, a lot more money than everybody else. And it's easier for boosters to funnel some of that money from facilities and whatever to the athletic department to players, or funnel extra money, new money to players into the NIL salary pool that's starting. So a lot of schools just don't have that. I don't think Alabama, has that money, but Nick is certainly trying to get boosters to dig into their pockets a little more and get that money.
Yeah. And here's the thing. It's like, and this is what I've been, because I understand it a little bit more than I guess the average fan, obviously. But you take places like, does Alabama have the boosters to support? Absolutely. Okay. Everybody's like, well, look, we can take Texas and Texas A&M and you can throw them away because nobody's ever going to be able to compete with that kind of money because they got the oil money, right? That's what they're dealing with. But these other schools that are being a little slower, they kind of understand. Like Nick. Nick knows that there's no booster going to tell him who he's playing. That's not going. That I mean, the day that happens, Nick will retire. He'll
Yeah.
just shoot the deuce and be like, guys, I'm done. All right, but at the same time, he doesn't want to go use a bullet on a kid. Paying $10 million for a quarterback, and then all of a sudden the kid doesn't play. Then you've lost that money because they don't have as many people that have
Mm-hmm.
that kind of money, but they do have some. I know them. I know who they are. All right, that
Mm-hmm.
have more money. I mean, they got a John Ruiz if he wanted to go, and they have people like that at Alabama too that have plenty of money, okay, because we've used their planes. I've actually had this one of them that's got like diamond mines and coal mines. In Birmingham that had enough money to buy a strip of land from his golf course to Vestavia so his kids could go to school there. Okay, they got enough. They got guys that have money that can do that, right? But he just doesn't want to burn those bullets.
Yeah.
And then when it comes, and I'll wrap this part up on the Jimbo deal, is like Jimbo wasn't lying, okay? And everybody gets mad at Jimbo and mad at what A&M was doing. It's legal. They're doing what
Yep.
they're allowed to do. He's not doing anything illegal, and I think he's fed up with everybody, claiming that the only reason that they're, you know, doing what they're doing is because of money. I think that pisses him off, and he's legitly tired of it. I think he saw that real quickly as a shot. And he did the same thing after signing day. I think with Lane's comments that kind of
Yeah.
spurred him. And but but what is he doing? Let's be honest. What's he doing wrong?
Yeah, no, I mean, right, and this is where state law comes in, NIL state law. I mean, he's they're following the law, right? They've got, I think the big thing when you hear coaches say, oh, they're cheating, or they're cheating around NIL, they're cheating with NIL, or, well, the big thing is it an inducement? And I actually ran a story today, and I mean, we are talking about this on Monday, and we dropped a story this morning on Monday morning about the enforcement and what's happening right now. And even if schools are using NIL for inducements, which of course they are, right? I mean, of course they are, but
I mean,
it's not, if you can't, if the contract is signed after the kid, signs or commits, and it doesn't connect him to the school, which all these contracts they don't, because these are done by savvy businessmen, right? If that doesn't happen, you're not breaking any rules. If there's not documentation, the NCAA is going to have a hard time trying to prove that something an inducement.
they will, in my opinion, they've been ever since last summer. They're doing everything they can to avoid the courtroom. Everything they
Yeah,
can to avoid the courtroom. And now they're dealing with people that's going to sue their ass back and then have deep pockets. Like
yeah,
you think John Ruiz, like John Ruiz, don't sleep on my guy John Ruiz down there at Miami, going and signing all these long snappers from all over the country. He knows what
yeah,
he's
yeah.
doing.
Yes, yes.
He's going so far ahead of y'all. Like he's playing chess and everybody else is playing
Hmm.
checkers. Okay,
Hmm.
that you don't become. You and I were talking privately a couple weeks ago, and I was like, look, you don't make that kind of money in life by being a dumbass. You
Yeah,
don't luck into it. And I mean, he's a very intelligent, savvy, like you just said, savvy business guy. And he's going and signing long snappers. Well, hey, look, why? But here's the other thing, like he's signing specialists and long snappers. Why? Because he can go give them $5, man, and they'll be happy as hell. And then he can go give the real money to his players at Miami. I mean, he's
yep.
not going and taking care of quarterbacks other places. Why not?
And
So
he can now say, the NCAA comes in or something. He can now say, see, I'm giving NIL deals to
everybody,
everybody,
yeah,
So it's smart. And there's a lot of people like him out there, right? Florida has one, A&M has several, Tennessee has several, big smart businessmen. A lot of them are attorneys themselves. They're going to write these contracts craftily in
yeah.
where they don't get caught for inducing prospects, and that's it's going to be hard for the NCAA to prove that. And it's like Ruiz, he strikes me as somebody who's like, come on, like come at me, and I'm
Oh
going
yeah.
to take him. Yeah, I mean, he's ready to. It's almost like he's ready to take down the NCAA.
Yeah, and here's the thing, and everybody wants to talk about booster involvement and tampering and coaches' involvement with the collectives and things like that. And I'm sitting here going, I had this conversation with somebody the other day. By let's just every school, and just so everybody knows this, I always said you got to be very careful. And this was the thing about the Nick and Jimbo thing that I'm like, listen, guys, everybody has enough dirt on everyone to hit the nuclear button and wipe this sport off the planet. Okay, I got enough dirt. There's so I mean, Nick's got enough dirt on everybody. Jimbo's. If you coach in this league at all or work in this league in any capacity, I would say 90% of the people have enough dirt to make a stink. Okay, and I'm
Right.
not saying that, and sometimes it's not even facts, but it's enough smoke where there's fire, and It could be as simple as, in recruiting, you'll be recruiting a guy, and all of a sudden, it's like, hey, this recruit cost X amount of dollars, and you don't get him, and he goes to school. He goes to this other school. You knew what his price tag was, so he
Right.
went to the other school, and so you can put two and two together. Didn't say that they paid him or whatever. And then coaches in general by nature, and then especially where I've been in my career, it's like if you ever beat somebody on a kid, it's, oh, y'all cheated. That's everybody
Yep.
wants to say you cheat.
That's
Everybody wants
right.
to throw out that deal you cheated. But going back to the collectives, every school that has a collective, if your school has a collective, you are cheating. And everybody's like, whoa, 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 what do you mean? Who do you think's telling that collective who to pay?
Yeah.
Somebody
Yep.
in the room,
Uh-huh.
somebody in the
Yep.
building is
Yep.
instructing, may not be the head coach. It's plausible deniability. Head coaches aren't going to talk to collectives. There's somebody in your building that
Yep.
goes and tells the collective that we want this guy. They don't just go and start recruiting on their own,
Right. Right.
right?
And I'll go back to that story I referenced from a couple of weeks ago. And these boosters, look, they don't give they don't give two whats
You
about
can say it.
saying
It's
whatever.
we're good
Yeah. Two
unless you ever get in
shits, right?
trouble.
They don't give it they don't care. And so I was on the phone with I think it's Hugh Hathcock. He's the University of Florida big donor who started their kind of $1 million collective. And
I know,
I
I'm aware of who he is.
yeah, I
He's
asked
been
him
in
a few
NIL a lot
questions.
longer than just the last couple of years. But go ahead. I'm highly
Not
aware.
surprised. I
I'm
asked
highly
him
aware.
about, you know, just different questions, and he said, I'm reading from it now. He said, we'll listen to what the coaches tell us to do. I just raise the money for them to use. He said it on the record. I mean, he said it. I mean, that is just about as blatant as it gets, right? I mean, they don't care. They don't care. Nobody is afraid anymore. They're not afraid of the NCAA anymore enforcement. They're not even afraid of their own state if they violate their own state NIL laws, which most of them say there can't be inducements. But they don't care because what state attorney general's office is going to punish their own state institution and disadvantage them? It doesn't make any
Right.
sense. So there's no enforcement at all. So they don't care.
Which brings me to the next topic. And then, well, something I want to talk to you about is, look, right now, we can talk about, and I will talk about the other part in a minute, but we can talk about this till we're blue in the face but just what you just said with the state, your state laws, your state is not going to put the state institutions in a disadvantage, and so you're just going to keep having these states trying to one up each other and make their NIL rules as easy as they can to help their state institutions, because a lot of times the people that are making the laws are boosters or alumni of a university themselves. Okay, so in their state. And
Yeah.
so until we have federal legislation, which is, I'd probably say with midterm elections coming up, we're probably at least a year away from that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly not going to happen
Anytime before
this year
November?
before November, right? And in you know November is going to be a big deal for college athletics. And NIL and a future federal some kind of federal legislation. I think people privately in college sports would tell you that the Republicans taking over the Senate, potentially retaking the Senate, is something that would make it easier for NIL to pass. I don't think it's going to be easy at all either way, but I think it would make it. They will tell you that it would make it easier to have a Republican committee chair because the Republicans want a narrow NIL bill. They just want NIL covered. The Democrats want a broad NIL bill with revenue sharing, healthcare, a lot of things that probably it's going to be tougher to get through. So that's why they'll say, hey, these elections are critical for college sports and getting a federal NIL bill as quickly as we can. But either way, it's going to be hard. Even after the elections, even if it's a Republican chair in a Republican Senate, it's still going to be difficult to get passed.
Do you find it? Because I find this terrible. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks like this. I find this terribly interesting that, a couple of weeks ago when Sankey and I don't even remember, it was a Pac-12 commissioner, went to D.C. to meet with senators and Congress people to talk about NIL legislation and try to get something done. Do you know whose name never comes up in those conversations?
Hmm.
why does Tommy Tuberville's name never come up in those conversations? Why isn't he meeting? I mean, the guy was a football coach in the Southeastern Football Conference. Like him and Sankey know each other. He is a sitting. He's a sitting. What's he? A congressman, I guess. What is he? I don't even know
Senator,
if he's a senator.
senator,
He's a
yeah,
sitting senator and a former football coach. Oh, and from the Big 12, SEC, I guess American, whatever, all these leagues, and he never comes up in these conversations. Why in the hell would he not?
yeah. Well, so that's a great point, and he's been a little quieter about it, right?
Yeah, a
He
lot
has. I
lot
think
more quiet than I would have been.
privately, yeah, I think privately he's been a little more talkative to people. In fact, there was some NIL folks that came up here in it was over the winter, December, January, and I went to have dinner with them, and they mentioned that they had met with Senator Tuberville like the night before.
Yeah,
So I think he's meeting with people. It sounds like he's trying to work things. It sounds like behind the scenes, but
he's good at that too.
um, yeah, he is. Yes, he is. So I think he is involved. I just, yeah, he has not been as public as some others. So it should be interesting. But I think as this goes, he might be more public. But again, this leads us to the Republican Democrat thing, right? There's a lot of Republicans that they're not going to want a broad bill that encompasses all this other stuff like revenue sharing and long-term health care and such like that. They're going to want a narrow NIL bill. And I think a lot of them are almost afraid to speak out because they sound like they might be a anti-athlete pay or whatnot, which when he probably would talk about it with a little truth serum. Tommy Tuberville, I would think, would tell you that he probably likes college football the way it was a year ago or more, where it was an amateur sport. So there's that too.
All right, so I'm going. I can't sit here. I'm all for the kids getting paid. I really am. All right, I think they should get paid. I think it's a great thing. I don't argue with that. It's just it's gotten so out of hand so fast. But at the same time, that's what happens when you don't have a plan. Okay,
Yeah,
it feels like we were ready, fire, aim. With this whole deal, and just didn't think things through. So that's about par for the course. But I guess at the same time, and you and I talked about this probably. I won't bring this up. So I've always said that I don't think you can fix NIL until there's some kind of federal, and I don't think it's going away. I think it's going
mm,
to be there. There could be some limits, but short of federal legislation allowing basically the schools to pay the kids, all right, there's not going to and putting everybody on the same rules. And going back to the Jimbo Nick thing, that's what they want. They just want everybody on the same rules, whatever that is. The transfer portal, and you and and everybody. I've always said if you can go back in the meantime, while we're waiting on this federal legislation that will or will not come, go back and take away the one time transfer rule. I've been
yeah,
told, not by just you, you did tell me this, and I'll say, you say you can't do that. That toothpaste is out of the tube. That's what you were telling me. And you're not the only one that's told me that. Several people say, oh, you're not going to be able to go back and fix that. My question is, why not, though? It's not federal legislation. There's no deal on it. Why couldn't they go back and say, take away the one time transfer rule to try to get some curb on the tampering, curb on the recruiting part, getting the kids back to picking schools for what they're for?
yeah,
Why couldn't they do that?
yeah. Well, that would. So let's go back to what happened last summer.
Right?
The Alston case, the Supreme
Right?
Court case, where the NCAA lost 9-0 and just got buried by
Crushed.
a by a conservative leaning court. Just got buried, and so what the bottom line of the Alston ruling was, from the way I understand it, because I'm definitely not a lawyer, but I've talked to enough to understand that
Did you
that
stay on the Holiday Inn
you,
Express last night?
yeah, yeah, you can't limit or restrict athletes, plain and simple. And so one of the things to appease the court, the NCAA did, and I assume it was partially to appease the court, was before the Supreme Court ruling came out, they lifted the one-time transfer, or they lifted the transfer, made transfers immediately eligible. And I one time at least in their career, I
But that's what
think
I'm
that
saying.
they
They're
did
still
that.
limiting them by saying you only get one time. If they were
They
saying,
are, which
you see
which
what I'm
I'll
saying?
get which I'll get to in a minute. So I think if you it's hard to go back, right? It's hard to go back. So if you go back, you are opening up yourself to all kind of lawsuits. There will be a class action almost immediately saying they're, limiting, restricting athletes, going back to the Alston case. Like it'll be an immediate. Like to me, that's not happening. There's just no shot. What's going to happen is it's going to go forward. It's going to eventually be now, instead of one-time transfer, it's going to eventually be unlimited time transfer. That is where we're heading, is unlimited time transfer, because you're going to have players who are going to be denied by a waiver after they transfer the first time. They're going to sue, and they're probably going to win in court. Like I think a lot of people would say they would win in court based on the Supreme Court ruling. So, and Todd Berry from the AFC has said this multiple times. He is telling his coaches, guys, just take it from me. It's going to be a one. Eventually, it's going to be a unlimited time transfer. So
You're
we're
100.
probably heading in the other direction.
You're 100% accurate. We're going to talk about this because I was literally getting to this. We're going to talk about this when we talk about it, doing away with the 25 and going straight to 85, because coaches are going to start cutting kids. If they can get 85, just get to 85. They're going to cut kids that can't play. And so they're going to take a transfer guy that can't play, and then they're going to cut him. So the kids are used as one-time transfer. He's going to
Yeah.
file an appeal. Here we go. And as soon as it gets granted the first time, kid's going to lawyer up, and here we go. And it's the same. It's going to continue the cycle. That's why. That's why I was saying. I mean, you're going to fight litigation regardless, one way or another, right?
Yeah.
We're going. The NCAA is going to court. It's just a matter of what they're going to court on. That's why I said it's a lot easier to fight that, because there are no state laws on that. You're going to fight 50 different lawsuits if you go try to do NIL legislation with the NCAA.
Right.
So might as well go fight one. And so
Well,
that's the
yeah.
whole deal with the transfer portal thing. And it's not going to stop NIL. It's just going to eliminate some things. I get a kick out of this. We were talking about this morning. We had our staff meeting this morning. We're getting ready to roll. And I was joking. Have you noticed all these, like, everybody's releasing their top fives and their top eights and their top 12s? It drives me nuts. But it's like every one of these kids that post their top fives, or so let's say, it's like a who's who of NIL. Okay, it's like releasing my top five today. It's Texas A&M, it's Tennessee, it's Oregon, and then on the side it'll be like Nebraska. So you really want to go to Nebraska, but you're that's where the kid really wants to go. They'll put the school that they really want to go. The one that just doesn't stand out is usually the place where they really want to go, and then the other ones are NILs of NILs. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I think
Miami's in a lot of top fives right now. It's
yeah,
amazing.
that's right, aren't they? They are. You know what? I think me and you have talked about this when I was visiting. When you look at the yeah, the rankings. Let's just go from you talking about player like ranking stuff, but I wanted to talk about the collective rankings. And have you seen this? And they coming out now with collective
You
rankings.
told me about it,
And
and I still hadn't gone to
yeah,
look.
and
Tell me
like
about it.
8 of the top 10 all fall into the same category. These are teams that have either never won consistently, or they're like 10 to 20 years removed from winning, from having consistent winning in championships. They are kind of desperate teams with a lot of resources and
Highly motivated fan
passionate,
bases.
passionate big boosters who, man, see the opportunity we can get back in Texas, A&M, Tennessee, Miami, Nebraska, USC. Um, they're all kind of in the same grouping, right? They are kind of desperate to get back to that level of winning. Florida, um, they're all right there, that have not won consistently in 10 plus years or ever, and want to get there and have the resources to do it. And that's what's fascinating. And all those teams, that get back to your question, you can find a lot of those teams in a lot of top fives and top tens from players, right? They're all right there, and they're all right there for a reason. And Lane Kiffin, I mentioned this before we went on, but I sat down with him last week, and he just, he said flatly, at the elite level, the 4 and 5 stars, maybe even the 3 stars, 100% of them are making their decision based on the highest bidder. He said, I mean, plain and simple. It's not any
That's
longer stadium.
100% accurate.
It's not conference. It's not coaches. It's not the beautiful campus or the city. I mean, some of these kids now, he said he had 2 instances of this. One instance was a kid had never visited the campus of the school he signed with. He just took to the highest bidder. And he said Another kid never talked to the head coach of the school he signed with. It's hard to believe, but he said it's true, and he said it's happening a lot, and they're just going to the highest bidder.
I mean, that's 100% accurate. I know for 100% fact that's happening. So he's not. I mean, that's true. What he's saying is absolutely true, and it's just what I mean. What what are we doing? I mean, I don't know, but that's the whole point. That right there is what I'm talking about with a one-time transfer. And I was
Right.
telling Neil on his show a couple of weeks ago, the kids are doing this. They're going, okay, who's the highest bidder? Okay, this is how much money you have. Now, I really like this school over here. This is really where I would want to go.
Hmm.
They just don't have the funds. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to get paid. And if it doesn't work out, then I'm going to go to the school I really want to go to. And there, it's like I was joking. It's like kind of having like the cute girl scenario, right? It's like, it's like getting a hall pass from your wife or something. It's like, hey, there's this really hot chick right here, and if she's really crazy, and I'm gonna go have some fun with her until she drives me crazy, then I'm gonna go hang out with the cute girl, like when you're in high school or something. It's insane what what we're doing to this game. I don't know, man, but but he's 100% right. That's happening. I
Yeah.
know for a fact it's happening. It's very disturbing that, and then it's just a matter of time. I'm surprised we haven't had a story yet. So some kid gets hammered with taxes from these NIL deals. I'm kind of waiting for that shoe to fall. So that'll be the next story that happens. All right, here's a question for you. What school is way behind in NIL that surprised you? That you thought I was like, when all this stuff came out, you're like, oh, they're gonna be on top of it, and they're way behind.
LSU.
LSU,
Have they have the resources. I think they have the booster groups. They don't have, again, they don't have what Texas and A&M has, but nobody does. But they have enough to get together. They have enough passionate boosters, and they have read their state law pretty conservatively, and it's changing. And it might change or have changed this week. By the time this publishes, and it will say, it will be amended to say schools can have involvement. You see the laws changing in Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi. They all changed to basically say schools can have more involvement. You'll see Louisiana's doing the same, and that the Louisiana LSU people say is what stopped them from starting basically a collective. So they've read it really conservatively, that it stopped them, from forming a collective. But they are way behind. They are, and we wrote in that big NIL story a few weeks ago about Gordon McKernan. He's a lawyer in Baton Rouge, and
familiar.
LSU grad and all that, and big alum, and he is the only one basically, you know, participating in NIL with the team, because they don't have a collective. So that's one that's really far behind. I think early on, Alabama was far behind, or certainly behind A&M more than they wanted to be, behind some others.
I think that was a
That so yeah.
product too. Alabama was probably a product of, quarterbacks are going to get all the money anyway. Besides, I mean, for the majority, the other ones are still getting money,
Hmm.
but big money. And Bryce already having his own deals and not feeling the need to go get money for a guy that's getting. I mean, he's making a gazillion dollars to start with. Um, you think LSU is a little bit of the same deal you talked about earlier, where they just had won a national championship a year ago or 2 years ago now? Do you think that's a product of it?
Maybe, yeah. You know what? Also, it could be a product of is, you know LSU's a place that, again, not like the A&Ms in Texas, is where they have 100 plus
They got a few that are
million
good.
dollar
Yeah,
million dollar type donors. LSU might have 15 or 20.
right.
And those people had to pay $17 million to buy out Ed Orgeron, had to pay, or had to get funds together to pay Brian Kelly and his new staff. Kim Mulkey is the highest, I think, makes the most money of any women's basketball coach in the nation outside of Gino Ariema. They gave her women's basketball, they gave her a huge contract. They hired a new basketball coach because of dismissing Will Wade.
New baseball coach.
They hired a new baseball coach, and they just renovated the football facility. I mean, that's a lot of money. All this stuff piles up. I mean, it's a lot of money. And so I wonder if they went to boosters, whatever, and said, wait, we got to give more money? Like, we got to give more money, and it's going to who? Wait, the players. Hold on. Wait a
Right.
second. You know, and I think that's part, in a lot of places, that's part of what happened.
Yep. That's why I always go back to, you and I have talked about it. I think federal legislation. We look. I mean, the Pac-12 of all people. I think I saw this the other day, and maybe in you retweet or something. I saw the other day is Pac-12 got 19. Was it $20 million? 19, $20 million back from
Hmm.
to divide amongst the conference. Why don't they take that money you're getting every year? I think they could take that money and put some kind of employment contract for student athletes to do that, and then let them get whatever they want to on top and do away with the stuff. But that makes too much sense. But because they don't want to give away their money either, that's what it's killing me. I was like, well, I mean, it is what it is. But all right, what is the craziest NIL story you've heard? Anything crazy?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, right? Some things with Lane told me about how kids haven't uh, talked to the head coach and signed with the team, or haven't visited the campus and signed with the team because of they were basically the highest bidder, the highest NIL bidder. So those things were wild. I think of a specific like story, and I wrote about it in that story a few weeks ago. But there was two SEC Western Division teams, and one team had an in-state prospect, a five-star in-state prospect committed for months, and the other SEC West team came in and offered more NIL money, plain and simple. And the kid went back to his in-state team that he had been committed to and said, "Okay, like you got to give me more money." And they didn't, or they couldn't, and that was that. Kid went to the team that offered more money and went out of state. Um,
You know, you
so
narrowed
there's
that down
that.
to like two schools, right? By doing that.
Yeah, yeah. So so anyway,
It's either Auburn, Alabama, or it's Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and I know
no. It was the out of
SEC
state.
West.
It was an out of state.
Oh, out
Well,
of state. Okay,
yeah. Well,
okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
there was an out of state SC West team that came into the in-state SEC West team.
Okay, all right. Go
Um,
ahead.
but but another story, and it didn't get as specific with me on like what conference it was, but I assume it was the SEC based on the story. But um, is that one kid was promised like a $500,000 deal, not a year, but it was a full deal.
Total.
Was for about $500,000 NIL deal, and the another team came in and said, "We'll give you 600,000, and not only that, but you can fly. Your family can fly privately to all home games." That was it. They're done, and went back. So went back and went to the school that's going to fly his family and give him $100,000 more. So those things are happening.
That's a pretty good
Now, are they
deal, though. You
happening
know,
at all 130 FBS schools? No. Are they happening at all Power Five? No. But they're happening in the top 10 to 15 to 20, and a lot of those reside in one conference. And
that's a
it's
pretty
happening a
good
lot.
deal. You know that?
It's a good deal. Seems like a great deal.
That's a great
Yeah.
deal.
I would
Nicholas
like that
Ayers should
deal.
get involved in some of that. We got Nicholas Ayer here in Oxford. They should get involved in some of that stuff, right? I mean, just bring him
Yeah.
back. Yeah, they
Yeah.
should get involved in
Yeah.
that. It'd be good.
Yeah.
But
Mm-mm-mm.
all right, so I'm with you. The only thing I've heard, and it's not crazy, but the thing that's killing me is like what's going on now, which is going to bring me. Our good friend Jordan Addison decides he's gonna commit to USC, which he was a little guilty of this as well. But these prospects are taking visits, and you're going to see a ton of this starting about right now, going to through June and everything else. They're taking visits to other schools to up their NIL price
Yeah. Yeah.
to force
And
their hand. That's going on.
I'll I'll mention it again. This is a great quote from Lane Kiffin about this exact thing. Um, in the Q&A I did with him, I was going
Happened.
to
It
read
happened
it.
to Ole Miss. It happened to Ole Miss.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was going to read it word for word because it's great. But Lane was talking about um,
A quarterback.
well, he was talking about every year. Um, why? Okay, he was comparing it to the NFL, and if NFL players didn't have a contract, if they weren't bound to a team every year, would an NFL player not like be in the free agency pool and not be recruited by other NFL teams and not wanting to drive his cost up? Of course they would,
Yeah.
right? And he said he can see this happening more and more, and now I've finally gotten to it. So he said He said, let's be realistic. In pro sports, if you are the agent of a player and the player can opt in a free agency every year and come back to where their previous, school was or team after testing the waters and driving the price up, why would you not do that? And he
Right.
said, why did Bryce Young not go into the portal this year? If you're advising Bryce Young, why did you not tell him to go into the portal and then walk into Nick Saban's office and say, hey, I want to be here, but I've got to protect myself. So I'm going into the portal and I want to come back here as long as you match the offer. And Lane said that on the record to me. And I think he thinks that will happen
Just,
more and more, and that's already happening. It's
yeah,
just
kids
not
are going to
getting
get smarter.
probably a lot of public attention, but it's certainly already happening.
100%. Kids are going to get smarter. Um, and 100% do that. And I think that's what we have here with the little Jordan Addison case. And look, I don't hate the players for this either. Like, look at Jordan Addison. This is we were discussing this in our meeting this morning. Do you know this is a fact? Jordan Addison is going to get paid more this year than George Pickens is going to get playing for the Steelers. I want you I want you to think about that. I mean, does anybody
Yeah.
else see? I mean, what are we doing? I mean, he is a good player, okay, and he's probably going to be a first round pick because he's going to get plenty of touches. But he's not like a slam dunk top 5 kind of pick. He
Right.
he is he's going to get probably overdrafted because of his production. But if you had right now, if George Pickens is 100% healthy and Jordan Addison is 100% healthy, who are you taking?
Yeah, I mean,
Who are you taking?
it's not it's that hard of a decision.
All right, who
Um,
are you taking?
Pickens,
Okay, so we got a
I
guy
think
that's
so.
going to play college
Right.
football at USC that's going to get paid
Hmm.
more money than George Pickens is going to get paid to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
insane to me.
Yeah. Yep.
And this has
It.
been, we're
It.
not even a year into this deal, Ross.
I know. I
Like, what
know.
are we
And
going to be talking about a year from now?
well, right, and the prices are just going to keep on
They're going
like
to keep going
going,
up.
going up and up. And I was talking to a recruiting director at a SEC school, and I said, and I anonymously quoted him in that story a few weeks ago. But it's like, okay, so what has changed from the previous, cheating that happened in the SEC for years now? What has changed now? How does NAL change it? And he said, well, when a kid would come to us and say, hey, we're getting, you know, in the past, 50,000, 75,000 from this school, usually be like, that sounds like bullshit, or well, I don't know if that's really true, or
Yeah, you knew who
now,
was paying it and who didn't. I
right,
can
and
second that.
now it's like, oh, not only is he getting 50, 75,000, he's getting 100,000 or 200,000 or whatever, the price has gone up, and it sounds like more people are doing it. So, um, that has been, seems like the big change in what NIL has done is drive up the price of what was once the legal payments, and having more schools get involved in doing that. So the market continues to rise. I mean, what about the Ruiz's guy, the Miami basketball player, $400,000 a year for a college basketball player who is good, but I mean, like, what are we doing? That's
Yeah, I don't
crazy. I
know. I've never
mean,
watched the guy play, so I couldn't tell you if he's good or not.
yeah, I mean, it's just wild. And then again, the return on investment. And I was on the phone with Ruiz for that story a few weeks ago, and it's like, are you seeing the return on investment? And in his response was the return on the investment. And you'll remember he tweeted, right, the announcement of that Kansas State
Correct.
basketball transfer coming, and he tweeted the deal too, the details of the deal in the same tweet, announcing he's transferring. Well, he when I asked about a return on investment, he used that tweet. He said it immediately made 5 million impressions, which means it reached 5 million people. And he said, "There you go. There's my return on investment." That's what he said.
He's not lying.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, the guy's intelligent and smart, and like I said, I like what he's doing, and which probably leads me to my next question because I probably know the answer to this one. What team or who is the team that you think's been dormant? Say my monster's kicking in. I'm dominant. What team do you think's been dormant that because the NIL is supposed to come back to life?
that's been dormant. That's about to, yeah, like break out. Well, yeah, and we that remember I mentioned the collective rankings, right? The little top 8 of the top 10 collectives
Yeah, but some of them are better than
are
others. Who, but with the
yeah.
talent they're collecting, who, in your opinion, you're going to go that's
I
going to
mean,
get
it's
back the
hard not to
fastest?
say A&M, right? It's hard not to say like A&M. I mean, they they just signed the best class ever on
Yeah, they've
paper,
been
you know?
people. Somebody was giving them hell. I saw a tweet. Somebody was giving them hell that they just now started signing all these guys. They've been recruiting well for a while now.
They have. They've been
Like I don't
recruiting pretty
know where
well.
that
Yeah.
stat or
Yeah.
whatever that came from. Like this, and they
Yeah.
made it sound like A&M hasn't been recruiting well. Then all of a sudden they have.
Right.
That's not accurate.
No,
They've been
right.
recruiting well for a long time. They just
Yeah.
got better. So they were
If
already
you're
an
talking
elite
about
team.
you're talking about a team that okay, you're talking about maybe, not an elite team, not in
Usually
the
somebody
blue
like
blood.
Tennessee,
Yeah, right. Tennessee
a
would be the one. That's
Miami,
I was thinking Tennessee or Nebraska or maybe Miami,
Nebraska.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Those teams, like you could see those teams partly because of NIL, right? Kind of rising back up. Like I said, they have the passionate, desperate kind of donors and fans who want to see come the team come back, or want to see the team going to get into that blue blood group. So those teams strike me, as I don't know that people would put Tennessee in the group of elite top 10 college football blue bloods. They're probably right outside the group, and I think they would probably emerge the way they're doing NIL. They would probably get into that group, and Miami might be another one. People might put them in the blue blood group, but they haven't won consistently for a
yeah,
long
I
time. And
wouldn't. Yeah, but
Nebraska's the same way, 25 years, and so I
agree.
could see them as well. And let's not forget, and it's been only 10 years for this team, but USC. I mean, as well, right? They're I think they're probably coming back and using NIL very well. As you mentioned, they just got Addison, so I think they're using it better than others.
I heard it was 3.2. That was what I got.
I don't know what to believe with some of these numbers.
Me
I,
neither.
I, yeah, I mean, like, and that's the one lately I immediately kind of questioned, like,
Because he's not a quarterback.
yeah, it's like what 3.2, and I'll tell you, I was talking to a coach who I think would know because he was in the running, and he said it was more like 800,000, which struck me as really what? Wow, I know because those two things are not close, right? Like
Nowhere near.
3 million and 800,000. So some of these things I really I've really questioned some of the numbers that are coming out for
Maybe that's
some of
what we
this
should do.
stuff.
Maybe that should help. Maybe that's something we can do to help NIL is make all the contracts public.
Well, that would help in the transparent offering
Transparency will
transparency.
bring
And
the
Ross Bjork, I think, was
balance
asked about that right
the budget.
last week, and they cited the privacy law, right? Like you normally would, like college athletics has cited for a while.
And that's
It's
why I
private
always say
information.
that's why I always come back. It's going to take something federal. Look, you to make a compromise to make things work. People are going to have to give up on things. You can't have everything. And it's just
Yeah.
like the players. And I'm for you. Look, I am for you getting paid. I don't make like any confusion about that. But you can't have everything. No organization on the planet, you can't get everything.
Yeah.
There has to be a compromise. You have to give some schools the power. There has to be a compromise. So somebody's going to have to give up something. Okay, you can't have just damn everything. I mean, nothing. And it's just that's the only way it's going to work. And
Yep.
so somebody somewhere that's why I always say there has to be a federal law. There's going to have to be things given up that hey you can't let that back in the tube. Well, something's going to have to go back in the tube. It don't not
Hmm.
everything, but to compromise, something's going to have to go back in. You're not just going to be able to out here just damn run free ass reign. And anybody that thinks you can't, that's the other thing that bothers me. Anybody that thinks that you're just going to be able to continue to do this shit and everything's going to be hunky dory, you've lost your fucking mind.
Yeah.
You have. Excuse my language. My mom's going to be so pissed. All right, but you've lost your mind that you're just going to be able to keep doing this and everything's going to be hunky dory. All of my boosters are going to keep giving me $10 million a year. That's not going to happen. Like
Right.
something's got to give. You can't do this forever. And
Well,
whatever.
and I think Lane, one of the things Lane said to me was, if it is going to persist and continue like this, well, number one, you'll have the giving stop to the athletic department and the facility. There'll be a pause
Facts.
on facilities for sure.
Facts.
And you were already seeing that. We're already seeing kind of a
Correct.
pause on facilities. Um, Number two, you'll have if like Ruiz is probably a good example. Big boosters, like basically individually, not collective, but individually bankrolling kind of a team, so to speak. You'll have
Owners,
them influential, like a team
owners.
owner, and Lane has quite a perspective on
Yes,
a
he
team
does.
owner calling him up and saying you
Yes, he
should play
does.
this guy more, and then getting fired. Yeah,
Yes.
so he over and on an overhead projector, as he told me. So yeah,
How
you'll
awesome would
have
that
that.
be?
You'll have those two things if it continues. You'll have team owner type influence in playing decisions, and you'll have um, boosters start to stop giving money to athletic departments. And what happens when boosters stop giving money to athletic departments? One, as we talked about, facility stops. But you know what else is impacted? Olympic sports. Olympic sports is impacted, and that's where it comes in. Where the non-revenue sports that lose two, three, $4 million a year, you rely on donor contributions to go a lot of that to those sports. They're going to be impacted. Outside the top 15 schools in the nation, schools break even or lose money, or athletic departments break even or lose money, and that's what a lot of lawmakers don't understand up here in DC. Is man, like outside of the top 15 to 20, they break even or lose money, and when you pull money from an athletic department and give more resources to football, give more donations to football, it is going to impact the non-revenue.
All right, let's talk about that. Let's get off NIL. I know it's like a damn saga. I know you probably tired of talking about it too. Are you ready to start covering something else, by the way?
Yeah. I am. I was writing about SEC football schedules, and I'm like, ooh, this is fun. I'm doing something that's not having
Anything.
to talk to
Yeah.
lawyers,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Anything. All right, let's talk about the scholarship numbers expanding in equivalency sports. So we've talked about it a couple of weeks ago now with baseball. It's 11.7, maybe going up to 35 and things like that. How do you see that turning out?
Um, yeah,
What happens
I
to a Southern? What happens to Southern Miss? What happens to Monroe? What
it,
happens to like Southern Miss? Like they're a elite baseball team.
right.
Are they going to be able to continue to be an elite baseball team?
It depends on their conference, right? All these decisions now. This is part of the Alston ruling. All the decisions from the NCAA that normally was made from by all the committees made up of Division 1 leaders at 350 schools that aren't homogenous at all. They're all very different, have different financial backings. The decisions on scholarships and restrictions and stuff and limitations and all this were made by committees of all those groups of 350 colleges and schools, and they're made in a vein to try to get competitive equity, to try to arrive at competitive equity, and it's just failing. And the big schools, basically with the money, are have been handcuffed, and they want more power. And the Alston ruling means that the NCAA needs to have less power. So all these decisions are coming down to the conference level. So the conferences will decide how much partial scholarship will they give, how much scholarships will they give, and how many coaches can be on a coaching staff.
And they still
They'll
have
have
this
all
thing called
those.
Title IX. That's not
They
going
do.
away.
They still, and Title IX will be the regulator. That's going to be, you give 10 more scholarships for baseball, you got to give 10 more scholarships to a women's sport as well. So that'll actually be, that'll give it regulation in some way. But it's going to be interesting to see what different conferences do, because conferences, the SEC is very different from the MAC. The MAC, very different from the West Coast
Well, you have
Athletic
some teams
Conference.
too. There's going to be a ton of sports being added. Okay, because you got some schools, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe you looked into this, I haven't, but I think Ole Miss is like at the minimum sport that you can do. So
16,
if
I
you,
think, is the minimum.
well, I can guarantee you across the street, baseball field, they're going to add, they're going to get to 35 scholarships. Okay, so when they
Mhm.
do that, they're going to have to add a female sport.
They'll have to
So
add, or they'll have to just add scholarships to like women's track or
right, but you remember
softball
football
or something
takes
like
up
that.
85 of them already. So when
It
you
does.
add
Right.
those, because the
Right.
female sports that are equivalents or whatever that don't get fulls, they're already getting more anyway. So when you
Yeah.
you start maxing those guys out, you're going to
Hmm.
have to create another sport.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
no other way
It
around
might
it.
be that might be the case. You're right. That
There's
that
going to be
that might happen.
there's going to be a gymnastics team and a bowling team
Hmm.
and a swimming team coming soon. I imagine.
Yeah. Yep.
But hey, by the way, my wife can be the gymnastics coach. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Um, but no, just all kidding aside, you're going to have these, and then how does there's going to be some schools that are going to say, hey, no, we're just going to keep doing 11.7 or whatever it is. And then
Oh
you're
yeah.
going to screw your whole league. You're going to basically take the competitive edge around. I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. It's just,
Well,
we've taken a simple sport and a simple organization, and in the process of like 10 months, screwed it up amongst all oblivion without having a plan.
and that's what's gonna just widen the gap. Already, right? We've seen the gaps widen between in Division One. We know that there are gaps between FCS in the non-football playing schools. We see the gap between FBS and FCS. We see the gap between Power Five and Group of Five. Now, what we're seeing is the gap within the Power Five,
Yep.
and there is probably a top 10, 20 or so, and then there's kind of everybody else, and you're going to see that gap probably widen because of NIL, but also because of these concepts from the transformation committee we're talking about. It's just going to widen the gap because you're going to have because the conferences can't collude and get together and set on a specific scholarship, whatever limitation. They can't collude. They'll be sued. So they got to do it on their own. And you're going to see the SEC, which has a lot more money than the Pac-12 and pours more money into resource baseball and stuff like that. Maybe go 25 baseball scholarships. Maybe the Pac-12 says we're only going to 16. And it's just going to widen the gap in recruiting and widen the gap between all this. So the end of the road here is we're headed towards some kind of professionalized model of college football, that is gonna have maybe collective bargaining and revenue sharing and whatever else, and is gonna include, you know, 20 teams, 40 teams, 60 teams, whatever, but it's not gonna be that many as we have now.
I agree. It's going to be NFL Junior. The
Yeah.
USFL is in trouble. All right, last thing I want to finish up on this. What you've been so generous for your time, but something that kind of came because of the NIL and all the Jimbo stuff and Nick stuff, it kind of got overshadowed. But the elimination of the not the NILs but the NLIs,
Mm.
elimination of the 25 initials that each school gets each year, and just saying, hey, we're going straight to 85 scholarships. You got to maintain 85 scholarships, and it's kind of funny to me you're going to have now you're going to have in NIL you got the people who don't have money are bitching about the people who do have money. And
Mm.
so now you're going to flip this script on this rule. You're going to have schools that love the portal. They're going to love the 85. People that have been doing it the traditional way and building from up within said, "Hey, that's bullcrap. We've been doing it the right way." So it's just what's your pros and cons? What's your gut? What's your feeling this on going just to 85?
Well, yeah, I I think, well, I guess first, why they're doing this, and it's because the 25 was put in uh, to kind of restrain, as you know, the
Blue
cutting
shirts,
of
gray
players,
shirts. Yeah.
basically, and all the blue shirt, gray shirt stuff as well, right? Cutting out oversigning, basically. And you could do that. You could do 25, 25, 25, 25. That's 100 scholarships, and that gives you wiggle room of 15 to get to stay at the 85.
Well,
But
you
that
got
was
5 years of it,
before, or
125,
five.
and
It's true.
here's the
Yeah,
thing: the public needs to
yeah,
understand. You got 5 years of eligibility, so you're looking at 125 kids to stay 85. That's hard enough to begin with.
right,
Okay,
right.
but there's an
True,
art to it. It's not you
right.
can't. You had to take guys that you knew are what we call program guys that are going to be there,
Be
and
there.
so to
Right,
keep your roster numbers up. But go ahead.
right, right. You gotta have a good mixture of those. Right. And what's happened is that 85 and that 25 and all that, the 25 specifically, wasn't taken into account the attrition, the high rate of attrition that we see now in teams because of two things: the NFL leaving early for the NFL more than ever, right? And then mainly transfers, right? The one-time transfer exception.
Because they count as
You're
two
having so much.
initials.
Right. Yeah. Right. Right.
The
So
same kid was
so
counting twice.
yeah, and so you have teams that are that are having difficulty getting back to the 85, getting to the 85. Heck, some of these teams can't get to the 75. They're having trouble getting the 75 because they're losing. Say you said, I was talking to a coach and he signed 22 at the class in the signing period. He left 3, thinking he'll get transfers over the summer. Then he had like 6 players leave after spring practice. Well, he's gonna be down 3 then. do the math, he's going to be down 3. And that's been happening over the years where teams can't get back to 80, 85 or so. So that's why we're here. So it's going to be good. Coaches can now catch up in a way, especially first year, early year, second year coaches that kind of took over a team that's kind of in mayhem, and a lot of people have left. Down numbers like Kansas, for instance, I think they're like at 70 or something. So it's going to help teams kind of catch up back to the 85, or at least get them into the high 70s, 80. So it's going to do that, but as you mentioned, right, it's going to also probably lead to the cutting of players, the pushing out the door, the nudging out the door of players. So already they're going to the transfer portal on their own, and now they might be nudged into the transfer portal for better players that a team could sign from the transfer portal. So you're going to have that. I'm certain you're going to have that, and that's a fear among a lot of coaches. There's fear among the group of 5 coaches that the mid to lower power 5 are coming down to pluck their players out after maybe pushing off their own players. Then you have the mid to low power 5 coaches that are scared about the upper power 5 coaches coming down to them and picking. It's like this farm system, and
The
we already see it happening. When you can push out a player, it's going to happen more.
P- I think this is one of the, and they did say they did it for, a 2-year period or whatever they said for them. And maybe, look, I don't want to give the NCAA that much credit and think they're that smart. Maybe they're trying to fix, okay, look, we're going to give you 2 years to get your roster right. And then we're going to put in these stipulations. Maybe they're going to do that. I don't know. That's what they should do. This is going to be a freaking disaster. Okay. I mean, this is going to create, and I understand it. Okay. Everybody's like, well, it's a safety issue. Time out. This is not a this is not a transfer portal problem. This is an immediate eligibility out of the portal problem.
Yeah.
The transfer
Right.
portal is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
The transfer portal, basically, just for the fans that know, but when the transfer portal came out in October of 18, the whole you still were technically you had to sit out a year. And the reason the portal was put in place was to keep schools from going, okay, you can transfer here, 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 and here, but you can't transfer here. Schools used to be able to
Right.
do that. They would put a restriction where you could not transfer somewhere. All right, so that portal did away with that. It also did away with the fact that they could go to somebody else, a third party, and say that they wanted to leave. They didn't have to go through the coach, which I'm okay with. But kids make emotional decisions. They need to talk about it. Because I personally, if a kid didn't want to play for me, I don't want you here. If you don't want to be here, I don't want you here. And most
Yeah.
coaches are like that. But also don't want you, because you don't, you had the kids, they don't fight through adversity anymore. They get a problem, they're gone. But that's neither here nor there. But here's the problem this is going to create. One, you just said it, which was Todd Berry's already brought this up. Now kids are going to get cut on ability because they have no penalty for cutting kids. So if you stink, you're getting cut. And when you get cut, now I'm going to go, what if I took a portal kid that stinks? You know what I'm fixing to do? I'm
Mm-hmm.
fixing to cut you. Well, now I've
Mm-hmm.
just lost my one-time transfer. And now you get put in the portal. So now the kids are going to call foul and they're going to start suing. Here come the lawsuits. All right.
Yep.
It blows my mind. We're sitting here scared to death of lawsuits, and you just created one. That's going to happen,
Yeah.
and it's going to happen. It's going to happen in January or December when a kid gets cut. You watch. It's going to happen this year. It will happen, but they don't have
Yep.
enough foresight to see that. That bothers me.
Unlimited time transfer. Yeah,
It's
that's what it'll
coming.
lead to
Yeah,
too.
it's going. That's what you're
That's
exactly right. That's what it's going to
it'll
come to
lead to.
because the NCAA, the kid's going to lawyer up, and they're going to be like, I don't want any part of that. Go ahead and go. Go ahead and go. And now there's going to be precedent that every kid here. It's just going to be a snowball effect. All
Yep.
right, that's problem one. Problem two is this: is nobody has yet to answer this. All right, if you're a college coach, Ross, and you have to win this year, and you got 27 scholarships and with no penalty, who are you going to get in your 27 scholarships?
Yeah, you got to win this year. You're going to go to that portal and get as many experienced people you can put right on the field as
That
soon
is
as you
correct.
can. Or you're going to play, or you're going to, you're going to recruit them off of each other's teams. The
There you
great
go.
example of this, right, would be like, say, Brian Harson at Auburn, right? We know that he seems to be not in a comfortable position. So why would he not just go to the best group of 5 or lower level Power 5 players and try to get them and sign 15 or 20 of them and amass this this team of somewhat all-stars, let's say. I
You
mean,
think the
yeah,
tampering that was problem too? You think the tampering is
yeah,
bad now?
yeah,
You just
yeah.
created tampering on steroids.
Right, right.
I mean,
Yep,
what's the key?
yep.
Why wouldn't I'm with you? Why wouldn't you go and just basically every single team? All right, we're playing. Who does Auburn play? Let's see who Auburn plays. You did their schedule. You remember who Auburn plays early in the season, non-conference?
Uh, Dang it. No, I don't. I don't remember
All right, here we go.
who they have.
Well, that's not the right one. I pulled up Vivid Seats. Not a sponsor. I use Game Time. All right, so let's say they play. All right, they play San Jose State and Mercer. All right, San Jose State's got a kick-ass tight end. All right, he just goes about 110 on your team. You win the game. Walk across the field and say, "Hey, look, when the season's over
Mhm.
with, holler at me. I got a spot for you."
Mhm.
That's going
Yep.
to happen. I know that already happens,
Mhm.
by the way, but that's really going to happen now.
Yeah.
Um, eh, you're creating tampering, and why wouldn't you? So that screws the Group of Five schools. Okay, so they're going to get rated even more than normal. But here's the question that nobody's answered for me yet, Ross. What happens when those portal guys run out? Because there's no high school players coming. There's no they're not as many high school kids getting signed. What happens when the supply runs out?
Yeah. Well, um, that's the problem, right? That's a real concern. High school coaches I know are in a situation where they're concerned about the adverse impact on high school recruitment, and I know that some of the expansion of the 25 or the elimination of it was supposed to be partly to help maybe high school like recruiting. That was one of the incentives,
And it
but
did
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I
a
think
little bit.
yeah. I mean, so I don't know. I think there is real concern about what's going to happen to high school recruiting, and there's real concern about players quickly going into the portal and kind of getting stuck there. And it's happened quite a bit. And I think the NCAA just released a lot of numbers about portal data, and one of them really struck me. It was something like a third, or I can't remember what the number was, maybe around a third scholarship players who went in the portal came out of the portal to a new team as a walk on. They didn't have any scholarship spots. So
It's
now this will
sad,
open up
man.
spots probably in a way, but
I think I've gotten three
so,
to what you're saying. I think I've probably got three DMs on
mhm.
Twitter of a kid I recruited that I was still following or whatever many years ago from three different kids that are in the portal from their school and have nowhere to go. There's one kid that's like 6 hours short of graduation, and the other school once you go in the portal they're done with you. He
Yep.
has no way to pay for it, so he's just going to have to go get a job to go finish his 6 hours so he can graduate and be a normal. I mean, he's 6 hours short of graduation. It's
Right.
sad. Nobody wants to talk about that, and it just really is probably the most disturbing thing is of all this. And I know I've taken up plenty of your time. Is just how we keep adjusting rules and we keep doing things that are taking us further and further away from a good solution than instead of making rules that are bringing us closer to something that's acceptable. Instead of compromising and coming to some kind of
Yeah.
solution that will work, we keep making rules and doing things that are taking us further and further away from it. Does that make sense? I mean, we just
It does, and it's partly because, and I've described this in the story, like college sports, specifically college football, is just kind of stuck in purgatory. It's like stuck into this purgatory between amateurism on one side and professionalism on the other, and they're like in this middle, and they're being pulled by professionalism, it seems like, and pulled further away from amateurism. And they don't want to take that full leap. And I understand why. I mean, they don't want to take the full leap into professionalism, but it's getting there like incrementally. It's going to get there. And like we talked about earlier. And because it won't take the full leap, you have all these little legislative issues being passed and these new rules and stuff to try to kind of like open the door a little bit to like a professional model, but not too much, and that's where it is. That's the problem. And there's a whole nother problem here we get into, like big money college football and college basketball being a part of the higher education system is just it's never gonna work. It's not gonna work. And I think we're seeing that tension there as well.
And no doubt. Well, Ross, I appreciate the hell out of you, brother. I've taken up a ton of your time this morning. On Twitter, make sure you follow Ross at Ross Dellenger on Twitter. And like I said, if you're a college football fan at all, check out his stuff. He is, in my opinion, and of course that'll buy you a cup of coffee next time you come through Anniston, Alabama. But the best college football writer there is out there right now. Just tells it like it is, keeps things on the real, and really appreciate you for what you're doing for the business, and keep fighting the good fight, brother. You're up there in DC. Maybe we can get you. Maybe we can get you getting some laws passed up there, man.
Oh yeah, really, yeah, they'll listen to me. I've sat into enough Senate hearings to not want to sit through anymore. So didn't get into that. Didn't get into sports writing to sit inside of a damp, cold, like you know Senate meeting room. But
There you go.
I found myself in them a lot. But thanks for having me, man. It's good to be on.
You bet, brother.